There's a skill that many up-and-coming sound designers never really tend to think about, and it's not a skill that's often taught to them either. And no, it's not about how to use certain DAWs or work with certain plugins or even use certain microphones. It's the skill and ability to tell a story. If you're working in any media, TV, games, film, animation, podcasts, they tend to tell a story. Some are dark, some are funny. Ultimately, they all have narratives baked into them. But unfortunately, many sound designers don't really know how to capitalize on this. When they design sounds, they tend to just make sounds that match the visuals as close as they can and then call it a day. Usually this leaves things feeling kind of flat and lifeless in the end. So if you want to level up your sound design, you need to learn how to tell a story. And in this video, I want to outline some general points, give you some examples, and show you how you can execute on this on your own too. Now, we can all feel it when a good story is being told to us. We get sucked in, we get invested, we start to imagine ourselves in the hero's position. And the cool thing is, sound, just like music or art or writing, can tell a story and really support every bit of media that we're working on in the same way. So if we do our job right and don't just match the visuals as closely as possible, and instead try to tell a story with our sound, things come across much more colorfully. Now let's get into a couple examples of storytelling through sound. And one of my favorite ones from the world of film is actually in the intro from Captain America 2. So let's take a look at that clip. Now in this scene, what do you notice? And what do you especially notice about Captain America's footstep sound effects? Note that he's running at full speed throughout this entire scene, and his footsteps don't make a sound. He's sneaking onto this boat, but he's going at full bore, and he's so competent and so capable that he's able to be completely silent in even this extreme situation. Instantly, with this choice of sound design or lack thereof, you can tell very quickly what kind of character Captain America is subconsciously and right away. He's not breaking a sweat, he's not making a sound, he's able to take care of this situation easily. Nothing needs to be said, and nothing even needs to be shown for this to happen. We can just tell right away. Now, let's go with a completely different tone with another example. Just take a look at this scene from the game Inside. What do you notice about that pulse sound in the background? Sounds dark, intimidating. Instantly you know it's dangerous. If we were relying just on the visuals, maybe we could tell, but with the sound tied into it, we can tell instantly without any dialogue or any words on the screen at all that this section is deadly. Not only that, it adds to this dark, oppressive atmosphere that the game overall has. It just feeds into itself in this really beautiful way. And even if you closed your eyes, you could tell what kind of story they were telling just from these sound effects. So not only does this sound tell a story, it also conveys really important information to the player, that these pulses are dangerous. So even though these examples are totally different, they still tell some really awesome stories in a very, very quick way. Now, let's take an example of how this sort of thing can actually go wrong. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a clip from the game The Last of Us 2 and just redesign the gunshot for just one simple pistol shot. So all I'm gonna do is just design the sound exactly to the visuals, and I might even use some sound effects for this exact same pistol in real life. Now let's take a listen to it. Now, if you listen to that, it sounds fine, it's a pistol and it works in this case, but you can tell that it sounds kind of unsatisfying. It just doesn't fit right. We're wondering where the oomph is, where's the sense of space, what kind of tone are we looking for? Is this gunshot really important, or is it something that happens really commonly? When we're aiming to tell a story with our sound effects, and we all should be, it's a good idea to ask yourself these sorts of questions, even for something as simple and common as a gunshot. Some things to think about with this sort of sound design is that the post-apocalyptic world means that bullets are probably rare. This gun is probably not super well maintained, or it's hard to maintain. It might be a little clunky sounding, it might be a little rough sounding. When a bullet goes off, it might sound like a really big deal because shooting something is kind of really scary in this world. And if something like that happens, something really bad happened. And we want to give a sense of power, but also a little bit of fear to this, because again, if you're shooting something in this world, something really bad happened. And if that's the case, then you need to give it that sense of gravitas. So even though we had a simple gunshot before and it worked totally okay, we're gonna do a little more and we're gonna make it so that this tells a story. So as I'm working, I'm thinking about all these sorts of questions. How does this gun work? Is it in good condition? Is it not in good condition? What sort of oomph do I want it to have? Do I want it to sound big and bassy and boomy, or do I want it to sound little and kind of far away, or do I want it to have a lot of crack to scare the player a little bit as this sound kind of plays out? What kind of space is it in? Do I want it to be able to reverberate? Because that would be a big deal if someone else heard this gunshot and would come running, or especially if a zombie or something like that heard and could tell where you were. These sorts of considerations are the sorts of things you want to consider, even with these little micro moments. And when you're able to tell these stories, the gunshot can sound a lot better. Let's take a look at the gunshot I made with these kind of story elements in mind. So you can tell ultimately that this next sound is a lot better and it's a lot more satisfying. Now sure, there are more layers involved and other processing techniques as well, but when you're considering these sorts of questions, you tend to be able to hit those processing moments and layers much easier because you know exactly what you're looking for. There's a lot less guessing when you know what story you're telling. Now, this sort of process is exactly what I used with my students most recently in my step-by-step sound design course. We took a clip similar to this gunshot and I asked them to just design a sound to it without much input. And then from there, I listened to their gunshots and saw that they weren't really focusing on telling a story. But as soon as I started to point that out, they instantly caught on and were able to make infinitely better gunshots in just one day. So even though their sound design skills hadn't changed dramatically in 24 hours, their ability to create a sound changed very quickly when they're able to consider the story of this single shot. So the crux of this, being able to tell a good story through sound, is asking questions, both to yourself or to directors as well. While you're designing, you don't want to fall back into old habits. You don't want to just simply match the visuals and say it's okay. You want to consider the story, and you want to consider what this exact moment means to the people watching or playing the game. Now, if you'd like a big list of questions that I actually ask myself when I'm designing sound effects, whether it be footsteps or gunshots or UI or ambiances, I have a PDF for you if you want to download that. So just click in the description down below and sign up and you'll be able to grab that. Now you might be thinking, but a cashew tantalizing dash of powdered sugar upon a freshly baked beignet. I'm sure there are some sound effects that don't need any of these storytelling considerations. And you'd be right, there are some sound effects that don't need any of these considerations. Sometimes a sound just needs to be a sound. For example, if you're making sound effects for the new iPhone or something like that, you just want to make it so that it serves its purpose and that it conveys the right information. All good after that. But if you're working in game audio or film or TV or anything that's narrative based like that, you do want to consider this a lot of the time. Otherwise, your sound effects might just sound flat and lifeless. So while every single sound won't necessarily need to tell a story, thinking of your craft from the perspective of a storyteller will instantly change your sound design abilities and will help you layer a lot of depth into your work really fast. That's all for now. Thank you so much for watching. Go pet a dog.